If you want a better answer, ask a better question. You have to figure out how you're going to communicate. What are the words that you use? Some companies in the US are willing to pay up to $375,000 for prompt engineers. The things that they can achieve in a week is extraordinary because they figured out how to use prompt engineering. It's not AI that will replace you. AI won't make you irrelevant. It's how your competitors are using it.
Artificial intelligence, AI, ChatGPT, it is rocking the free world, but is it also rocking the accounting world? This is what we're asking now. We got Mark Wickersham on. We're doing a series on AI and how it's playing out. Mark, we're talking about ChatGPT, which everyone thinks is AI. It's mediocre though, isn't it? It gives bland, generic answers. Sometimes it's wrong. It's not really fit for purpose. It's not really changing much. There was a big hoo-ha at the beginning, but much ado about nothing.
Yeah, Rob, it's rubbish, isn't it? I first came across ChatGPT. I thought I was a late adopter because it wasn't until about January of 2023 I first came across it. It had already been out 3 months, and I kind of ignored it for a month. It wasn't until the back end of February 23, and I looked into it, and that's when I thought, wow, this is extraordinary, the potential of what it can do. And so I started playing around with it. I started teaching accountants in March 2023. And what I soon realized was something, I use this phrase that's, I don't know who I stole it from, but garbage in equals garbage out. And another phrase is, if you want a better answer, ask a better question. And what I realized is that really applies perfectly to ChatGPT. There is no doubt it is an extraordinary tool. But if you ask rubbish questions, if you don't know how to prompt, if you don't know how to create your prompts, then you're going to get really, really poor responses. And that's what I found that in the early days. I was struggling to get anything decent out of it. And then I figured out then how you do it, and then realized, wow, it is so powerful. And it's getting better. We have to realize, Rob, that when it was released in 2022 through ChatGPT 3, it was a good model, but they've just brought out in May of 24 ChatGPT 4.0 for omnimodal, and it's a huge step up. The power of it, the speed of it is extraordinary.
And that's the secret key that unlocks this, isn't it? It's this prompt engineering that we're hearing. So ChatGPT, most accounting professionals will be aware of it now, but this is a new skill set that presumably they have to learn to unlock the opportunities that it affords. So talk to us a little bit about what is prompt engineering? Why is it important?
Yeah, prompt engineering, fancy word. All it really means, it's really simple. Prompt engineering is how do we communicate with an AI system? That's all it means. And it's important because, firstly, I believe that the number one soft skill that we can all have in our businesses is communication skills, because communication affects everything. Without great communication, we can't have great leadership in our teams. Without great communication, our marketing is rubbish and we don't attract the right clients. Without great communication, we're not going to convert new clients because we're not saying the right things in our sales meetings. Communication is the number one soft skill.
And Mark, to the point of accountants, if we're going to do advisory services and be trusted advisors, that's way beyond compliance. That requires high-level communication skills, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you are absolutely right. Communication is so important. And so prompt engineering is just communication, but it's communication with an artificial intelligence. And the reason that's important is because of the increasing amount of AI in our lives right now, and the increasing amount of usage and things that we can do with large language models. I mean, they are extraordinary what you can do with them, but you have to figure out how you're going to communicate. What are the words that you use? They're a natural language model. So we taught them using natural language. And just to give you an idea of how important this skill is, by the way, I saw in several places like Bloomberg back in 2023 that some companies in the US are willing to pay up to $375,000 for prompt engineers. And just to give you another indication of how important I take it, in my business, Rob, there are 6 people in our business, and Thursday is ChatGPT Day. And every single one of my team, I asked them to spend the morning just playing around with ChatGPT, doing research. And then we meet at 2:00 for an hour on Zoom to discuss what they've learned in the world of ChatGPT. Now, that's pretty much a day of my entire team disappeared on that. Why would I want to do that? That's because I've seen the productivity of my team go through the roof. The things that they can achieve in a week is extraordinary because they figured out how to use prompt engineering, how to use tools like ChatGPT to get extraordinary results. So this is really important for accountants because communication is so important, and increasingly we're living in an AI world.
Give us an example of a bad prompt.
Yeah, a bad prompt is, so when we create prompts, and perhaps this is the easiest way to think about it. It's actually quite simple, and I'm a simple person. I like to keep things simple. Yes, there's some complex things we can do in the world of prompt engineering, but I like to think of talking to ChatGPT as like talking to your new hire. When you hire a new person, it's just the same. And what often happens is when we ask somebody to do something, if they do it wrong, if they come back with something wrong, it's almost always not because they were stupid, it's because we didn't tell them the right instructions. And we tend to think that, a lot of people think that with ChatGPT, we can just give it an instruction. I call it the task. The task might be, write me a blog post. And if you say, write me a blog post, you're going to get something that's completely useless. It won't reflect your writing style. It won't be aimed at your target market. It won't be written in the structure that you want. You'll get rubbish out and you'll think, well, that's no good. I'm not going to use that again. And it's just the same with when we have talked to an employee, that if we don't give them great instructions, we're going to get a bad result. So we have to figure out, how do we construct our prompts?
When we look at good prompt engineer, I totally get it. Give me this, give me that, and you don't put any parameters around that, you're going to get such generic answers. So there are certain elements, presumably, to a good prompt. Talk to us a bit about those.
Yeah, so I teach prompt engineering, and I've learned over the last year from studying it, there are various, I call them the core components. And off the top of my head, there's about 16 or 17 of them. Not that we have to use in every single prompt, because it all depends on the importance of the prompt that we are doing, the importance of the task. If we just want some ideas for where to go on holiday, perhaps a short prompt might be okay. But if we're doing business advisory for a client and we want to come up with a strategy for that client, then that's really important. And so we should make sure that we craft the very best prompt so we get the best results. So some really interesting things that have been discovered over the last year in the field of prompt engineering. Some of the things that are really important. For example, we know that in the systems prompts, in ChatGPT systems prompt, it plays the role by default of a helpful assistant. So whatever you ask it to do, it'll come back to you as a helpful assistant. But if we ask it to play a different role, what happens? We get a better answer. We get a more nuanced, more detailed answer. So if we want to create a prompt that analyzes an Excel spreadsheet of financial data, because we've got a meeting with a client tomorrow and we want some ideas, we want it to interpret those numbers. If we ask it and say, I want you to play the role of a financial accountant skilled in understanding numbers, before we then give the task, we get a better result. So that's what I call the persona or the role. Giving it a persona or role can really improve the results. Another great thing, and there are many things we could talk about, there's a response format. How do you want the response to be formatted? What kind of writing style do you want? What tone of voice? Do you want it to have, what language even? And that might sound not important, but actually there's a big difference, as you know, Rob, between British English and American English. And so if you want it to write a report for your client and you're in the UK, then specify you want British English. If you're in the US, specify American English, and you'll get a different set of wording. One will be more useful to you than the other.
If you were to look at the intended recipient of a output from, say, ChatGPT, you could ask it to write a report for a 20-year-old that would come out very different to writing a report for a 60-year-old, and they would use that language that would appeal to that audience. That's something it would do, isn't it?
Absolutely. In fact, ChatGPT now understands. So we can use abbreviations, a bit like the younger generation do when they write text messages. I have no idea what LOL was. I think it's well, I have no idea. There's a few things I've seen, but in the world of ChatGPT, if you say ELI5, LE5, ELI5, it knows that means explain it like I'm 5. And so if you want to do some research and it's a complex topic that you're just getting into, let's say you want to get into and understand, for example, you want to understand cryptocurrency and the blockchain, and you have no idea. If you say, please tell me about blockchain and cryptocurrency and ELI5, or explain it like I'm 5, it will be really simplistic, probably too simplistic. But equally, you could say, explain it like I'm 20 or college graduate. And this becomes really important. And here's the practical application, Rob, is if, let's say, you are using ChatGPT to write a report for a client on something, perhaps you're going to write a report on tax planning, then you want to think about the reader. You don't want it to write a report on tax planning full of jargon and stuff that we understand. It wants to be something that the client can understand. And so if we add to our prompt, write it as if it's aimed at a college graduate, it will probably be, you need to experiment, but probably be at the right kind of level for a business owner not experienced in tax or finances to understand it better.
Very good. And are there different kinds of prompts, or is it just get the persona right, get the output right, and most prompts follow similar lines?
Well, I'm a big fan of systemizing stuff. I love templates. So one of the things we have in our business is we have a prompt library full of prompts, and I like to spend a bit of time creating prompts that we can then reuse over and over again. And so I spend quite a bit of time in terms of the format of my prompts. I teach the different components of a great prompt. And so when I'm crafting prompts that I think we will reuse in the business, I'll always make sure there's the persona or the role in there. I'll have a template, an example, I'll have the writing style, and so on and so forth. But also there are different prompts, and I won't go into the detail right now, but as you start to study it, you'll hear things like chain of thought, one-shot prompting, few-shot prompting, and there's all these words that go around. But what essentially that means is that when we are creating our prompts, when we're conversing with a large language model, at its simplest level, there are two ways that we could go about it. One-shot prompting means that we craft a response in such a way that it gives us a perfect answer first time around. And I find that really useful if you are going to have a prompt that you want to use on a frequent basis. So, for example, one of the things that we have in our business is my daughter, who works for me. She does all of my blog posts. And the way we do blog posts in our business is I do a video, we take the transcription, and she used to then edit that down into a 500-word blog post, and then she'd create social posts and so on. And that would take a half a day to do. But now what she's done is she's created a prompt, which you feed it the transcription of my video, and it will do everything with one prompt. That's called few-shot prompting or one-shot prompting, which means you can create a template that you can reuse. The other way of thinking of prompting is, and this is just as good in different circumstances, is having a conversation. So your prompt is very often, what you want to do in the first prompt is give it the context. And context, by the way, is another critical building block or core components of a prompt. It's the background information that you give it. And the more context, the better the result that you'll get. And it may be that the first prompt is just to give it context. It may be, if you're doing tax planning, for example, the first prompt is to give it a PDF of the tax legislation, and you ask it to check it, to go and read it and check it understands it. And then the second prompt, the follow-up one, is where you then ask it to do something. And you might have a series of 3 or 4 prompts where it builds and builds and builds. So they're the two kind of approaches to prompt engineering.
Yeah. And you already started to weave in here some examples of how prompt engineering can be applied in accounting firms. There's lots of jobs, tasks, mundane, automated things that an accountant can utilize ChatGPT for to take the workload off.
Oh, there's a ton of things that we can do. So just give you just some examples of things that we can do with our prompt engineering, how we can use ChatGPT. We can use it it's brilliant at financial and data analysis. It's great that you feed it a CSV file or an Excel spreadsheet of numbers, and it's particularly good at analyzing and giving a report back on those numbers, which is great for the accounting profession. It's great for research, and that's great for things like tax planning and stuff. If we want to do some tax planning, then I would go there first to ChatGPT rather than Google. It's also great for helping us with our systems and processes. So, for example, if we want to improve or create an onboarding process for new clients, then we can use ChatGPT to do that. I think I mentioned earlier, I think it's amazing for business advisory, for strategic planning. It's also amazing for content marketing and any form of marketing. I also teach how to use it for pricing. We can use it to help with our pricing systems. We can use it. It's brilliant at communication and words. So things like we can use it to answer client emails. There are just so many things that we can use it for in an accounting firm.
I'm just shocked in a lovely way about what new opportunities this opens up for accountants and accounting firms if they can master prompt engineering and start to embrace a tool like ChatGPT. It's phenomenal, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's the firms that I've been teaching to use it. I mean, they report that it just saves hours and hours of time. I mean, let me give you an example. It's not a specific accounting one. I was asked recently to do a 2-hour course on prompt engineering or on ChatGPT and upload it onto a video platform. And I would have always said no to that before, because one of the requirements of putting a course onto a platform is in the US. They have quite complex requirements for CPE, because then it's NASBA, as you're probably aware of, with NASBA. And so they'd always say to me, we'd love you to do a course for us, but we need to have all these different learning objectives. And we also need to have review questions and questionnaires with multiple choice. And you have to indicate which is the wrong one and so on. That for a 2-hour course to comply with that could easily take half a day or even a full day to come up with all the learning objectives, the questions, etc. And so I just grabbed the NASBA requirements. I fed them into ChatGPT. I have a standard prompt for this now. It's got the NASBA requirements. It understands them inside out. And I have a one-shot prompt that then I just feed it the transcriptions of my course. And I say, go ahead and create me the learning objectives and the questions. And in about 5 minutes, the longest bit of the job is actually cut and pasting into a Word document and just making sure they're in a format that's just a little bit easier to just read it when I submit it to whoever it goes to. But it takes what could be a half-day job to a full-day job and makes it something I can do in half an hour.
Wow. So just in closing here, Mark, if we look at prompt engineering as a skill that should be acquired by today's accounting, bookkeeping professionals to stay relevant, to stay in the game, to keep adding value to clients, what steps should they take to start acquiring these prompting skills?
I think the starting point is really simple. Just start using it. The more you use it, you'll figure stuff out. But also go and learn as much as you can about prompt engineering. I think the challenge is where do you go? So where did I learn prompt engineering? I learned a lot of it just by watching videos on YouTube, which is a great starting point. And then I went out and bought some courses on prompt engineering. Fortunately, there's not too many courses around. It's only been around this subject for just over a year, but I bought a few courses. And if people want, they can always buy my courses on it. I teach prompt engineering. I take everything I've learned for the last year or so and made it specific and relevant to the accounting profession. But start off with just play around with it, and then play around and have a look at a few things on YouTube. I've actually got some videos on my YouTube channel with some example prompts where I walk through some practical applications of prompt engineering in an accounting firm.
We'll put some of those links into our show notes, Mark, so that people can follow up. Just in closing, what's going to happen to the accountants that are slow to the party here, or even think that this is not going to be a big deal and they can just carry on without it?
I've often said, and I know I'm not the only person to say this, it's not AI that will replace you. AI won't make you irrelevant. It's how your competitors are using it. And so there are some firms that are going to properly embrace this and use it. And as a result of that, they're going to be more prevalent and better in their marketing. They'll get more marketing messages out there. They'll attract better clients. They'll be doing better quality work like business advisory, and they'll they'll use it to improve the productivity in their accounting firms. So they will start to be at the leading edge, whereas the firms that don't embrace this will become irrelevant, not because of AI, but because of the other accounting firms that are showing the way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It is a changing world, and we've got to get in there, start to get our hands dirty a little bit, roll our sleeves up. Otherwise, we will become irrelevant. Mark Wickersham, expert on prompt engineering, all things ChatGPT, as well as value pricing. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.